Peas on Moss is brought to you by Kimberly Schaub, a culinary scientist turned business developer. Over the past 4 years, the audience has downloaded episodes over 40,000 times, and we have 1,500 impressions across the website and a host of social media platforms. Will you consider contributing to the show to help keep it on air? Donations through Patreon help to offset the cost of web hosting, editing, and producing the various Peas on Moss offerings, from podcast episodes to videos, and every little bit helps. From corporate advertisement to sponsored content and private contributions. Reach out to me on peasonmoss.com for details. Hey Peas on Moss listeners, Kimberly Schaub here. It's so great to be back with another special episode. This is an interview with Dr. Rosemary Trout, the Assistant Program Director of Culinary Arts and Food Science at Drexel University in Philadelphia. Being described as a recognizable legend at RCA is probably not how she would prefer to be mentioned, but for me, she is a committed member and attendee whose presence continues to reinforce how important it is throughout a career to foster a network and connections with colleagues in the industry. In our conversation, we covered her origin story, her hobbies, and her career progression to Drexel. But in this interview segment, we're starting with her description of her very unique and interesting work as the food scientist on Epicurious's 4 Levels videos, where home cooks and professionals at different levels work out a recipe for a food product. Dr. Trout comes in later to talk about how the differences work and appear in the various recipes. We build from that conversation into her insights as a scientist and whether she feels any additional weight in representing food science to mass media or in being a scientist and a woman in the workforce. She pivots the question to addressing the mindset that one develops to be successful, and I think that's where she reveals her superpower: the ability to set the right attitude and perspective to work through challenges and gain the most possible from the path chosen, whatever that is. Here's my conversation with Dr. Rosemary Trout from Drexel University.
I am Dr. Rosemary Trout. I am the Program Director and Assistant Clinical Professor of Culinary Arts and Food Science at Drexel University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So our program is a combination of food science and culinary arts. So from my experience, traditional food science programs are often housed with nutrition, or they're part of an agricultural school, land-grant universities or state universities that have a lot of land, perhaps some agricultural interests. I know Penn State is, they do a lot of dairy work in the dairy space. So they have cows on campus. Out at University of California, Davis, they do some pigment research and things like that. So they have groves that they can work with. We are based in Center City, Philadelphia. So we don't have space. We live vertically, not horizontally, as people who have lots of space in the country might not realize. So we focus more on product development. And with that, the fact that we have 3 commercial kitchens to work in, as well as all of the analytical space that the university has to offer, makes our program unique, I would say. So we actually work with food as ingredients, but we make sure that it tastes good too. So our students get a mix of culinary arts programs as well as science programs. Courses, I should say.
Well, that's really interesting. I appreciate the comparison to the other programs, because I imagine for high schoolers coming into the food science realm, sometimes it's hard to know what type of program to select.
So I feel like our program is unique in that we have the culinary courses that are part of our curriculum. And I find that's really the selling point for our students. We also have a co-op program, which is 6 months. And you're paid, you work in a food company or a restaurant, depending on which aspect of the food world you want to go into. And you get that experience working with people outside of academia. And so you have that experience as well. I feel like at Drexel, we have a culinary and food science program that's in the context of a larger R01 research university. So we do quite a lot of research in all the departments across the university. So students have access to that as well. I always like to say, Kimberly, that I love food. It's always been a part of who I am, what interests me, and professionally, it's always been part of my life. But I do have other interests too, and I assume that our students and incoming students do as well. So in addition to learning all about food from different angles, including the culinary aspects, how to cook, food engineering, food chemistry, some food microbiology, and sensory science, we also offer our students the opportunity to minor in something that's completely different. And so I think between the co-op, the inclusion of culinary practical courses in our science curriculum, and the opportunity to get some research experience or learn about other things really is what makes our program unique. And I think that's why many of our students choose it.
I'm so curious about your fame on Epicurious.
Oh my goodness.
You're the resident food scientist, right?
I am. So I don't work directly for Epicurious, but I think I'm in over 40 of their videos.
Wow.
So yeah, that was, oh my gosh, Kimberly, that was a real lucky thing for me. Let's see, back in 2018, the summer, probably right around now, mid to the end of June, my graduate advisor at Drexel got a casting call for a new series on Epicurious that they were looking for a food scientist. And he said, you should do this. And I totally did it on a whim. Like I just typed out some things, snapped a picture, sent it over. And I got a call from them almost, well, not immediately, but I think the same day. And they wanted to set up a Skype interview.
Oh, wow.
So I did. And then they said, hey, can you come up to New York next week? And I said, yes. And then, yeah, I've been doing it ever since. So it's been so much fun. But it's a lot. It's been a really interesting experience because I had no idea what went into making a food video at all. No clue.
Well, I want to ask all about the behind the scenes, but first tell us about, I guess, what they were engaging you to do, and tell us about some of the episodes you've recorded with them.
Okay, so the very first one, I really didn't know. They didn't really even have a name for this series. It ended up being called 4 Levels. And they just asked me to think in terms of chocolate chip cookies. They were going to talk to me about chocolate chip cookies. And then also they were going to talk to me about spaghetti and meatballs. So we filmed 2 episodes in the first day. So of course, it's July. It's early July. It's so hot. I took the train from Philadelphia into Penn Station. I didn't wear any makeup because I knew I'd be sweaty. And I thought I'll pop into, Avon Penn or something, use the restroom, put some makeup on because I had no idea what to expect. And I go to the World Trade Center, which is really a fabulous, fabulous building. And they met me. And they said, oh, we have someone who's going to do your hair and your makeup. And they take me up to, I don't know, like the 20-something floor. And it's these fabulous views. And I walk into this studio and people are introducing themselves. And honest to goodness, I had no idea it was going to be kind of a thing. And, I had not done any kind of entertainment like this before. So there's, several sound people, there's camera people, there's lighting people, there's makeup people, there's producer and director who are fabulous. I think I've worked with maybe 4 or 5 different directors now. And so you really I got a huge appreciation about what goes on behind the scenes.
And these are the amateur to food scientist series, right? The 4 levels?
Yeah. Yes. So they have level 1, level 2, level 3, and then food scientist. And level 1 is, what's that?
You're your own level?
It's funny. People tease all the time. They're like, Rose, when are you going to cook? I say I'm the scientist. I would cook, but so level 1 is supposed to be kind of like a home chef, somebody who does not really know how to cook. Level 2 is supposed to be an advanced home chef where they have some cooking knowledge, maybe elevate a dish a little bit. And then the level 3 is a professional chef. And most of those chefs are from the Institute of Culinary Education in New York City. Occasionally they'll have someone from a restaurant, but usually that's what it is. And here's a little secret I'm going to tell you. The level 1 and level 2, they're mostly casting call people who have done some acting before. So they're not necessarily food people. And then level 3 is always a professional chef. So spaghetti and meatballs was the first one. Chocolate chip cookies was the second. And then after that, oh my goodness, I've done so many. French toast, ramen. The most recent one that came out last week was enchiladas, done nachos, chocolate cake, apple pie, all kinds of things. So
yeah,
that's been fun.
I see on the website. It looks
and then
like
there's a spin-off series too. It's called Epicurious FAQ, where they take level 1, level 2, level 3 chefs and me sometimes Rhoda Boone, she's in it. She's from the BA Test Kitchen. They they'll ask us questions about the episodes. They'll go through the comments from what people write and ask us the questions. So that's a lot of fun, that one. Here's the other thing. I never see the food and I never meet the other chefs. They film me separately. Yeah, it's people don't know that. They send me the recipes and then so I can go through the recipes and prep a little bit. Difference is in anything from starch content and, the food science of the recipes.
When you're coming on to the show as a food scientist and you're somewhat representing a very large segment of the industry, you're also tasked with sharing the essential information about the science behind the food that's being discussed for this episode. What are some key pieces of information that you wanted to make sure the audience hears? How does the weight of representing an industry feel on your shoulders? I have so many questions.
Oh my gosh. So it depends on the episode. And to be honest, they ask me questions. So the director will ask me questions. So I don't always know exactly what I'm going to be talking about or how it's weighted. That's how it started out. Now we go back and forth with notes quite a lot. So that helps me. I never really thought in terms of having the weight of of an industry on me, but I don't know that I would see it exactly that way. I feel like as long as I'm honest with what I know and what I don't know, because there have been times where I say, I can't speak to this because it's not my thing. I haven't had time to research it. So I'm pretty honest and upfront with them about that. And they're really great about it too. But just making sure that I'm being authentic about people's recipes and making sure that, they're all different. And we know well that different people like different things and aspects about food or a specific recipe. But learning, teaching media people about food science and what it really is has been kind of interesting too.
I think what I was very interested in, because I have a military background, I was kind of accustomed to being one of few females in a workspace or workplace, I guess, and not necessarily daily accepting the role of being the woman in the room necessarily, but knowing that is sometimes applied to us. That's what I was very curious about with the panel.
Yeah.
And I really liked that there's an acknowledgement that women leaders are different. We are wired differently than men are. And each of us individuals are wired differently from each other.
Right.
And I really liked that there was an acknowledgement and a celebration of that each of our leadership styles is unique, irrespective of our genders. And that's really what you leaned on. It wasn't, what is it like to be a woman in the workplace? It was, well, what skills am I bringing?
Yeah, I totally feel that way. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like I might be a bit of an outsider on that, or outlier, I guess. And before I say anything else, thank you for your service. I know I've said that to you before, but I certainly value it a lot. I don't, being a woman I've never felt like it's held me back or I've been, specifically singled out in any way for being a woman in really any position that I've had. Have there been run-ins with people? Yeah. And have they been men? Of course, but I've had them with women too. So I feel like if we just look at people as individuals, because we're all pretty complicated, I would say. I mean, I am a woman, of course, and I love being a woman, but there's a lot more to me than that. And sometimes in professional settings, particularly, I think it's essential for us to think of the person we're dealing with or talking to or working with as a person and not necessarily as a descriptor. And I feel like that happens a lot. And it's just not my style. It isn't. I've had great women that I've worked with. I've had some women who are really tough, and I'm sure people feel the same about me. So I think looking at people as individuals is really key for success in any field at any level. I mean, that includes people who are doing vice presidentships or people who are as essential working in dish rooms. So I think that women certainly bring things to the table, but I like to think in terms of individuals instead of specific sexes or genders.
I appreciate that you're helping us focus on the pieces that we can control. It's something that my mom always said to me as well.
Oh, good.
Say focus on our mindset, focus on our attitude. I do like the reminder that presume or hope for the best in a person, even when those actions don't seem that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that also is something that I've used to address, my personal imposter syndrome, in the sense of stop focusing on how much I feel as an imposter and focus on the pieces that I can control or that I can improve for myself.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. You definitely control that. The other thing is for like imposter syndrome, assume that other people are feeling the same way. And also nobody expects anyone to know everything. I don't think that that's a reasonable expectation. But we all have these doubts. I really think self-confidence is an important tool for all people. And also a little bit of humility too. If you do make mistakes, so what? I mean, these happen, and I'm older, way older than you, but these things happen. Just try and move on. Most people, most of the time, are probably thinking about themselves. That sounds terrible, but I don't mean it in a bad way, but we're all worried about how we're presenting ourselves so much. Maybe if we just kind of focused on all of the attributes and the positive things that we have in our lives or that we can present and contribute to other people, then I think that can make a workplace a much nicer environment.
How would you suggest, kind of, to an individual who might feel stuck? How would you help her unstick herself?
So mistakes are okay. And I might be an outlier here as well, Kimberly. I feel like if all research comes out to be exactly what you think it should be, it's probably not super valid. Mistakes aren't fine. They really are. And in fact, sometimes, I know this sounds cliche, but I mean, anybody who's ever taken an organic chemistry course or lab knows that, oh my gosh, to get any kind of extraction out of anything, if you can get 50%, you're in really good shape. So why don't we just apply that to other things? I think it's really good to have high standards and set the bar high, but it's also really good to present results that don't work. When you do research and you try and publish the research in a journal or some sort of an academic outlet, oftentimes it's just the success stories that you read, but in reality, there's a lot to be gained and learned from the problems that came up during that research. The other thing just flipping the other side of the coin on this, sometimes you're just doing it wrong, and that's okay for you to learn from people too. So if you're ashamed or you're worried that something isn't turning out the way everyone expects it to, it could be that you're not doing it correctly, in which case you might have to just start over. And, I like to think that if you can start over without getting yourself super down and super depressed or feel like a failure and just move on with your life, you're way ahead of the game. I really do think that. So take advice. Take good advice when people offer it. Also important part of setting yourself up for success. And that's success on a personal level as well as professional level.
Wow, I really, really appreciate your focus on mindset. Through all of this, whether you were talking about your relationship with food and your experiences with Disney and finding food science in Drexel University, through your career, how you talk about your work with Epicurious, so much of the theme is you controlled your mindset. You really focused on the opportunities at hand. And that's really an admirable characteristic.
Ooh, thanks. I really do. It probably comes from growing up with a lot of people. You just, perspective is important, and learning from other people is important. And remembering that, like I said, most people are really focused on what they're doing and not thinking all of the negative things that you think they might be thinking about you. It might not be as bad as we think.
That's the thing. Get out of our heads, I think.
Yeah. And happy people make the world a better place. I really believe that too. So a smile, also a cliche, but a smile goes a very long way. People like to be around people who are happy with themselves, not people who constantly need coaching or coaxing under all, normal circumstances. Let me just put it that way.
Yes. Thanks for listening to this special length episode with Dr. Rosemary Trout. I have admired her voice in the industry and was really excited that we were finally able to align our calendars. You can get more information about Dr. Trout's work at Drexel at the Drexel University website and speak with a recruiter about their undergraduate and graduate programs. Epicurious's 4 Levels series is available on their website. Thanks for checking out this episode, and we'll be back with a Quick Bites episode soon. In the meantime, be sure to go back through some of the oldies and goodies podcast episodes that we've featured research chefs, food scientists, food founders, and more in the Peas on Moss archives. If you're able to sponsor the show, please let me know. I have just a few Patreon sponsors right now whose monthly donations are helping me offset the costs of podcasting. Thanks, everyone.